Hello and welcome to Lost Gotham TV. This episode we will be reviewing the Richard Laymon book, The Lawmen, that was published under the house pseudonym of Lee Davis Willoughby. So, right here. I'm going to jump right in because some of these videos, a couple of them have gone longer than I anticipated, and I want to try to keep them under 10 minutes if I can. So, Lee Davis Willoughby was a house name. So, several different authors published books. It was part of a series called The Making of America. And only one of them was written by Richard Laymon, and it was The Lawmen. And I wasn't sure what to expect with this book, because predominantly Richard Laymon was known for writing horror, but at the beginning of his career, he experimented a lot with different genres and things to try to find his niche. And so this is a little bit of an unusual one. I mean, thinking about all of his works, he's done some different things here and there, a couple of children's books here and there. He has the one romance novel, and he has the one Western novel, but he also has a couple of Western themed short stories as well. They were included in Western anthologies. I think I have somewhere. No, I'm not going to go digging for it right now. I should really prepare more for these things. But anyway. I wasn't sure what to expect because, with something like Savage, which... Okay, yeah, got a couple of copies of Savage right here. So, with Savage, there was Western elements in it because of the time that it was set at the end of the 1800s, the 1887, 1890 kind of time period, which is right around the time that The Lawmen is set. And basically this is about, if you're familiar with Westerns and stuff, this is about sort of Pinkertons. The story revolves around Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and the Hole in the Wall gang. And there are a couple of original characters in here, obviously fictional characters, who represent the lawmen in opposition to the Hole in the Wall gang. Okay? Who were train robbers and bank robbers and things like that. And so we don't have the horror elements of other things, like the Cellar came before this. We don't have fantastical creatures that are, raping and eating their way through a population. So what were we going to get from a Western? I've seen horror-based Westerns and stuff here and there, but, I didn't think that that's what this would be, and it wasn't. So it is more of kind of like a chase, not chase exactly. Gosh, it's like an investigation almost, because one of the things, other than the Western setting, one of the things that sets it apart from many of his other books is the fact that it takes place over quite a range of time. Many of Richard Laymon's other books take place in relatively compressed time frames. Sometimes it can be a single day or night. Typically it tends to be over maybe a few days, maybe a week or two. In some cases, maybe there's a break and they come back a couple of weeks later. With something like Savage, again, because of the time period, just the realities of travel create a kind of a built-in slowness to them, where basically it takes or took weeks to travel across the Atlantic, and in Savage, and with Lawmen, there's a little bit of travel around the west of the country, and the story, again, I don't think this is too much of a spoiler here, actually takes place over several years. And so we have sections of story here, sections of story there, where maybe the trail is either hotter or colder, trying to track down the Hole in the Wall gang. And we have interesting male characters, and we have our kind of what we would come to know well in Richard Laymon's books of this strong female protagonist. And so yeah, it has elements that we're used to seeing, but it's different. It's a different setting. It is earlier in his career, so it's a little more exploratory. But now this is one that is, whilst it is kind of rare and unusual, it actually isn't too hard to get your hands on without paying too much money. I picked this up from someone in the UK. If you've seen my earlier video on, I did an unboxing where I got this book along with a bunch of other books. I've since found several other listings here and there, so it's not as hard to find as some of his other books. Something like Halloween Mouse, there's not that many for sale, and the ones that are for sale can be quite expensive. This one, I found several out there, and they are at reasonable prices. Even some of the other hard-to-find ones, like Secret Admirer and Nightmare Lake, they're a little hard to find, and they can sometimes be a little bit expensive, but they're not super expensive. They're not in layman's terms. They're not Halloween Mouse. There's just some of the books go for a lot of money, and this isn't one of them. So it's definitely one that's more accessible to people. The fact that it was a different setting, I found interesting. I think I do recommend it. It's something different. If you only read one type of book all the time, it can get a little dull, and you start to get a little repetition in things. So changing it up a little bit every now and again and reading something that is maybe not your usual fare can be kind of a palate cleanser of, freshening you up for going back to something that you're used to. And I think this definitely works for that. It's got action, it's got some romance and the raunchier elements that we're used to with Laymon. And it's an interesting read. And I'm actually a little bit curious to maybe, I'm not going to go out of my way. There is a local bookshop here in Salem, Oregon that has some of the other Making of America books in stock. And so I'm kind of curious to read some of the other books in the series by other authors and see how they compare. Because it's a different genre for, aimed at different people, So somebody who reads Westerns reads a lot of Westerns. Somebody who reads horror reads a lot of horror. They don't always read outside their genre. And so, I might do that if I find some other titles. Maybe I do a little bit of research and find out who the other authors were who wrote under Lee Davis Willoughby. and see if there's any other names that I recognize as other authors, and see how they did. If I've read other of their books, see how they did in the Western genre in the early mid '80s. Could be interesting. If you think it's interesting, why don't you let me know? Maybe hit the like button, leave a comment, send me a message or something, and yeah, let me know what you think. Maybe you've read it. Maybe you've read some of the other books in the series. Anyway, that's it. Again, trying to keep these shorter. Sorry if I rambled. Until then, I'll see you next time.